Hello, today we're here with Darius Kemp of EAZE. We're here to discuss cannabis, social equity, and reinvestment. EAZE is a platform that has been very much involved in cannabis and in the social equity space, and Darius has been doing some great work. So without further ado, I want to pass over um, the hosting capabilities to him and let him introduce himself and get going with the presentation. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Luis. Good to see you again, brother. I hope you can see the slide deck up.
Good.
Yes, my name is Darius Kemp. I am the head of equity and community change at EAZE. And my understanding of what we're talking about today is cannabis, social equity, and community reinvestment. What does that mean? I know you have a couple of questions for me, Luis, so happy to answer those. Um, but just give a quick overview about EAZE and what we do and what I do. So EAZE is the largest cannabis platform in the world because California is the largest market in the world. So, and we are one of the largest platforms for retail sales of cannabis here in the state of California. We're a delivery only service and provide on-demand delivery here throughout the state of California in just about every major metropolitan area and the surrounding areas as well. The great thing about EAZE is that one of our core tenets is social equity and making sure that we put a face and put our own kind of skin in the game as it relates to how we build social equity throughout throughout California, hopefully throughout the rest of the country. And so, since I became the head of equity and community change, what that all means is that I oversee our social equity brands, their onboarding and kind of growth on our platform. So if any of you have seen our social equity menu on eaze.com, you will see that menu has grown exponentially over the past year and a half. We started with 3 brands and now we're at over 13. So very, very happy about kind of our growth there. And then the community change aspect is really focusing in on our external and internal culture as a company. It's not that D&I stuff that most people like to think about. It does include broad scopes of diversity and inclusion type things, but at the core, it's what is EAZE internally, what is our internal culture doing to make sure that we address the issues that surround the cannabis space? How are we living up to our best values? And then how are we going to work externally with other partners and groups to make sure that not only are we internally living up to those values, but we're also showing them externally as well. So making sure that our team is really prepared and set to have these conversations throughout the state.
Well, thank you. I've seen the work, I've seen the websites and the brands you're working on and with. It's great. So with that, you've said a lot of what social equity is to EAZE, and the proof is in the pudding with some of the work. But can you maybe highlight a little more about that, and specifically what do you at EAZE feel social equity is in cannabis?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. And as you asked me that, I thought about it, and like there are all these technical definitions about social equity. There's a lot of confusion about what social equity is. I mean, even in every major organization, you have to figure out, okay, how are you defining social equity? Most people look up to other entities, or some people look across to other states or countries or whatnot. But basically, social equity, from my experience having done this work for the past 2 years, is that they're basic broad definitions, right? There's a political definition, right? So as we talk to elected officials here in California, and as anyone else, as other states legalize, Michigan, New York, New Jersey, Arizona, New Mexico, and the list just goes on and on. Social equity will become a political term. and how we have discourse around what we're doing to rectify the war on drugs. How are we not building an industry off of the backs of the imprisoned Black and brown people who have suffered for decades over racist policies and whatnot else. And so it's social equity is a political term. It's also a legal term, right? If you look here in the state of California, we've made it a legal term. It is in law. The BCC has regulations and identifications and codes and definitions. Individual cities and localities have created legal frameworks for what social equity is and is not. Did you live in this zip code? Did you live on these street corners? How much money do you make? When did you live there at a time when there was over policing and over incarceration in the drug war? What in other backgrounds. So as people look into what social equity is locally, state-based, what it is in California will not exactly be what it's defined as in Michigan, in New York, New Jersey. For example, Colorado's legal system, legal recreational cannabis system was created before California's, but they are just getting around to defining social equity. We did that not at the same time, but they came about a couple months to a year or so apart from each other, right? So they kind of dovetail one another. So it's a legal term. And then it's also a community definition, right? It's when I talk to people in Rhode Island and New Jersey and other places that, through different conferences and things, they use social equity as a community organizing term. It is how we define the movement for equity, business opportunities, and self-sustainability in the cannabis space. And then for EAZE's part, I've helped to create our own kind of definitional framework for it. So it actually includes all of these phrases, all of these others that I mentioned here. It includes a political definition. It includes the legal definition and the community definition, because at the end of the day, we need to make sure that we're aligned with our community partners. We definitely need to make sure we're aligned with the law as we deal with cannabis and federal stuff and state stuff. And we also have to make sure that our politicians understand what all this means. Our elected officials know that. So EAZE's definition is based on the legal term, but it's also based on understanding that rectifying the war on drugs is a part of any social equity program, and making sure BIPOC and Black and brown folks are the recipients of the benefits that come out of social equity-based programs.
Amen to that. Yeah, there's, here in LA, we have a program, and the city has created that, which we're glad, like you said, one of the few, not every city, not all states have that. Here at Social Equity LA, the work that we do, we are able to provide resources, support, but to your point here, I think that the social equity program is also an action verb. It's a practical term and a programmatic term that we're looking to better implement, better define, right? So you guys have done some work around implementing some things such as your momentum program. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on programs, either yourself or others that that are out there, like
yeah
programs. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I want to thank groups like you at Social Equity First and the work you do with collective strategies and whatnot. You're very good partners, I think, in LA for really understanding and helping to define the boundaries of what social equity is and expanding those boundaries in Los Angeles and throughout the state of California, and being, really a leading voice for Black and brown folks when we are having these conversations in spaces that are mostly white dominated, unfortunately, in the cannabis space. And to the question, where should you go to get started, right? At the end of the day, I think that's the core of what your question is, right? How do people get involved? Like, social equity is all these things, but what does that mean for me as an individual? How do I define that for me? What does that mean? And then also, does my definition fit into the legal definition? Is it a part of the political definition? Are there organizations and groups that can help me get there? And so I think in my experience at EAZE, I've noticed I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of different groups, and the core is that people need to understand the difference between accelerator and incubator. What is an incubator? What is an accelerator? And what different services might they provide? And then how do I fit into that? If you're looking to get started off the ground, you're like, hey, I know I grew up in South Central LA in the 1980s, and I know I must be eligible for some sort of social equity program, but what does that mean? Or are you a person that's like, hey, I've been actually doing some of this stuff for a very long time. I just need someone to help me get over the hump. I actually figured out all the base stuff, but I need to figure out, how do I get over that hump of making real profit and then reinvesting that back into my community? And so that's what I want to talk about. That's why I want to make sure I give people a list of programs and things that they can do that will help define their whether or not they're in an accelerator mode or in a incubator mode. So a program like ours, Momentum, amazing program. We provide $50,000 grants. That's grants. That's not an equity stake in their business. That's free money, and that grant goes to that company so they can help them get over that hump, so that they can buy that machine that they always wanted, invest in that delivery van that they need for distribution, hire a staff member to do accounting, legal services, whatever that might be. So a program like ours at Momentum that EAZE does is all an accelerator program. You have to already have a business going. You got to already be licensed for the most part. You need to already have like structures in place. The Momentum program is not for people who are, I want to do. It's more for people who are, I have done and need some help. Right. So that's the really way you should think about accelerators. And then some other programs here and partners that we've worked with over the years that I think people should definitely look at, especially if you're here in the state of California. But a couple of these are national as well. So our Momentum program is national. There's Our Dream Academy, an amazing program run by my good friend Hillary Yu. This is a national program that takes that has several applicants and groups throughout the year. And that's an incubator. So the good thing about Our Dream Academy is that they take you from scratch, from zero, I know nothing, to something. To, all right, this is basic level understanding that you can get. Then there are groups like Make Green Go, which have various different levels. They might have an incubator style thing, but then they also run things like in Fresno, they run the city's kind of accelerator style program where they're helping people either get their licenses, get through the paperwork, accelerating them onto business growth. And then there are groups like the California Asian Chamber of Commerce, which also does similar things like Make Green Go. They help people at the incubator stage. They have official programs. They help people at the incubator stage. But if you're at like an already created business stage, they have programs that can potentially help, and connections and insight there as well. And then there are groups like the Hood Incubator, who started off, of course, the incubators in their name. They help Hood folks incubate their companies and get started off the ground. And I think they're also expanding into various other aspects of how to help people get over that hump, make real professional business growth. And then also, lastly, people forget, call your local mayor. We would go to your local city's website. So as cities and states start to tackle these things, they will put websites up. If you just go to Oakland's Cannabis website, you get information about ways to apply and incubator style programs and who's providing what and what companies are providing what. Because a lot of times in social, to even have a license in the city will say, hey, you need to incubate, or you need to accelerate. You need to work with social equity companies, right? And so to do that, so reaching out to your local mayor, your local supervisor, or other local individuals at the city or state level can potentially provide desperately needed resources for people and information. And then as people legalize across the country, once again, we already know that like places like Detroit are developing and building their social equity program. If you're interested and you're in Detroit, you should be talking to Councilmember Tate and all these other people and the mayor. You should be engaged because they're going to define what the program is going to look like for you in Detroit and throughout Michigan.
Yeah, wow, that's great. Great sources here and great bit of information. I like that you've both put non-traditional partners and traditional partners, right, such as Momentum and Hood Incubator, but also the Chamber of Commerce, the mayor's office are great ideas. Sometimes we don't think that, these are businesses that need the support of those types of associations.
Yeah, especially in a state like California. And I think you want to look at like as Michigan comes online, as New Jersey comes online, as New York comes online, these conversations about social equity are going to get even more heated. I mean, let's talk about New York for like 2 seconds here. They did not pass cannabis legalization last year because of conflicts about social equity. The same thing for New Jersey. New Jersey, though, had a state referendum. New York is still, once again, in that circle of like, hey, let's try to get all this stuff done. Once again, social equity is going to be key. And if they don't come to reckon with social equity in New York, they're not in New York State. They're not going to have cannabis legalization. I'm pretty sure about that because it was killed last year as well. So once again, once these cities and states actually get laws passed, like they're going to be your key resource and ally. Having a council member, a state senator, a state assembly member that cares about cannabis social equity, that's from your district. I'm going to throw a shout out here to Senator Bradford, people like Senator Bradford here in California, down in the LA area, or Senator Evan Lowe, or Senator Scott Wiener, or Senator Nancy Skinner, like all these people, Senator Rob Bonta, Assemblymember Rob Bonta, who are champions for cannabis. And if you're in their district, you should be giving them a call. Right? Because they can potentially point you into some resources that could be super beneficial.
Well, thank you. You're kind of leading into the last question quickly here is you have said, kind of what people should do, which I think is a good advice in the sense of getting people connected, making sure they're meeting their representatives, getting informed directly. But with that, let's say, I know this is a broad question, but what bit of advice, one thing you want to let our members know that and the audience know about social equity, about getting into the cannabis industry, what advice would you give an entrepreneur that may be wanting to start?
You're gonna really,
I told you it was tough.
a tough question, dude, because there's so many people at different levels here at the industry. And we work with people who are legacy operators, right? Folks who were in the quote unquote illicit market before adult legalization or before medical legalization. And these folks have years or decades of experience, and they were able to transition and bring that over into the business world. So for those people who may fit that scheme, right? If you are a person who's like, hey, I've been hustling these streets for quite some time, and I want to get some money from Subversive or all these different funds that want to invest in social equity. You need to know how to move into the business space, and in that business space, I'm just going to tell you like it is. It's really it is like the rest of America. It is not as diverse as you would want it to be. It is controlled by people and things that may not have your best interests at play. But have to know how to play that game and move those pieces and be active and be strong. But don't get discouraged, because if you're trying to move from that illicit or legacy marketplace into the legal marketplace, it is 100% doable. And partner up and find other folks who may come from that background so y'all can work together. Most people, I think for Black and brown people in the cannabis space, it really does take a community. While some of our other white counterparts may have really big investors because, you know, that they know from Harvard or Yale or fancy schools or whatever that might be. I think the benefit that a lot of the maybe people in the gray and illicit and legacy markets have is that, you know, people, you have connections, you can build, you can start with one person who has a grow, and you get a license for delivery, and y'all partner up, and bam, you make your own brand and you do stuff together. I've seen that that's how people are really starting to grow and become really self-sustainable in this industry. And then the other piece I would say for people who maybe don't come from that, who are like, hey, I've never hustled on the street, sold weed or anything like that, but I want to get involved in this. Hey, this is going to be like selling Budweiser, right? Like, it's going to be a massive industry. For those people, I say go hardcore into making those connections, finding people who do know that hustle and know the street people, make connections with, use whatever skills and identify the skills and the things you want to do in the industry, and then perfect that and identify where you fit into the marketplace, then identify your partners and your allies, and also, you know, find some capital. No bank is going to give you any money for the most part currently. Hopefully in a couple of years, when people watch this video, they'll be like, that's stupid. Why wouldn't a bank give you money for a cannabis company? But you know, find capital, research. There are so many groups. For example, Chris Webber just announced that he's working with a fund, and they're going to invest $100 million into social equity cannabis companies, along with what Subversive has already said they're going to do and invest $100 million, along with EAZE is already doing. What we've done with our program is that we've set aside millions of dollars in resources and other things for our partners to build them onto the platform and make them self-sustaining and profitable businesses. So, you know, at the end of the day, it's going to be a lot of making the right connections, finding where you fit in and you do good, and then working your ass off to get there, and finding somebody that has some deep pockets that can help.
There you go. Hey, well, there, Darius Kemp, the head of equity and community change for EAZE. Thank you with that game plan. It's all about capital, so we hear you loud and clear. Thank you very much once again for your time.
All right. Thank you, Luis. It's great to be here, brother. Thanks.